On this episode of the show, I have with me Dave Schumann. He is the Chief Data Officer at Precisely, and we're going to be talking about the data fabric acquisition. We're going to talk about the acquisition of talent, how open source is driving innovation, commercializing that innovation, and we're going to talk a little bit about adoption and usage as well, and a little bit about AI and how some of all this fabric data stuff fits together. We've got a ton to cover with Dave. We'll see how far we get, but Dave, thanks for taking the time.
Hey, Amir, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, before we dive in, what do you guys do at Precisely?
Well, Precisely is a global leader in data integrity, helping organizations ensure their data is accurate, consistent, and contextual so that they can trust their data to make better decisions. We deliver solutions for data quality, data integration, location intelligence, data enrichment, and that enables confident analytics, operations, and AI initiatives.
Awesome. All right, this topic we're going to be talking about data fabric. Obviously, the talent side is a growing part of this. I think there's no single AI associated initiative that is not facing some talent issues. But I guess let's talk about that. Let's start at the top when we talk about the importance of talent and, where we sit within the ecosystem. Maybe that's a good starting point.
Yeah, it's a great one. And, there was this particular origin story, I think, has 3 points of attribution. So there was an article that was written by David Guest, probably back in the early 90s. Tim Brown at IDEO picked it up and ran with it. McKinsey has some claim to it. So I don't know really where to put its direct attribution. But it talked about hiring T-shaped people. And really what it said with T-shaped people is you're going to have, if you think of the top branch of your T, that's your sort of generalist set of capabilities. I kind of think of that as almost interpersonal, communications, business understanding. And then the branch down on the T was a very specific set of skills. And so for a number of years, we talked about that as, when you go to hire people, hire Renaissance thinkers in this, hire T-shaped individuals. Well, that kind of hit the 2010s, and we say, well, T is not enough. Now we need at least 2 downward branches of expertise. So you have to know networking, and you have to know, storage substrates, or you have to understand SQL programming, and you have to understand Python. And now you really needed 2 deep branches down, and we called those individuals pie-shaped people because 2 T's didn't really work out. I look at that in the same vein, and I think about when we look at talent for AI, that you really need to look at comb-shaped people. And so think of that broad generalist across the top. Again, you've got your business skills, you've got your critical thinking, that's your Renaissance individual that comes into this. And then there's a branch of different skills because you're going to need to attack this in a number of different ways. And so when I look at people to hire in to the organization, I'm looking for comb-shaped people because I want them to have multiple areas of expertise. It's kind of a ragged comb that doesn't have to be perfectly even at every line along the way, but I want to see different skill sets across this. I want to see, object-oriented programming, but I want to see SQL, and I want to see some experiment into, API utilization and understanding of different data stores that are there. And so not just one specific area of expertise, really looking to that, multiple areas, that sort of Renaissance individual, critical thinker that has the ability to learn in new things. And then on top of that, now you got to build a team. So, for me, a team is kind of a game of Tetris because the blocks aren't all the same shape. And so I'll have somebody who has very deep expertise in one area. I'm going to balance them with the open void, that came down in our Tetris game, and we're going to fill in that particular void so that I have the complete row. So now you've got the 2 elements of that. The individual, I want to see this Renaissance individual, that critical thinker, a lot of individual skills. And then the team, think of this, how do you build that into a matrix of skills across there? But you're not hiring square people. You're hiring the people that fit to the voids that you have within the organization.
Absolutely. It's interesting as you talk about those voids within the organization, and there are in this day and age of these advanced skills you need. There are certain skills that are becoming more nuanced and more difficult to hire for. And I guess the option is to help someone or allow someone internally to ramp up. The comb-shaped person, obviously, they always don't line up with the next person, and you do get some overlap collision. The gaps in between, those skills where they're just so in demand and they really aren't as readily available on the market. If you are looking to build and grow a team, do you look for candidates to just give them an opportunity to ramp up? Is that a path that sometimes makes sense?
When we interview people to come into the organization, we do typically do a whole sequence. It's sort of from the start of the process where one of our leads will interview that individual, and that's kind of the eye of the needle. We want to be able to filter out people as early in the process. Those with potential will actually have them meet with a number of folks across the organization. Any one of those can veto an individual coming in because we're looking for fit. I talk about data, and it's specifically in the AI subcomponent of this is a team sport. And so it's more important that I have somebody that blends well with the team than I have the world's greatest expert in MCP servers. Because that, I believe, on this specific skill, we can either learn, we can train somebody up into that. They can have that, using that critical thinking and experimentation, build that skill set, or I can supplement that with third-party resources. And so when I look at my bench, I have in my organization a series of trusted partners that I will bring in specific areas that have deep expertise in MCP servers, or in Snowflake Cortex models, or in generative AI in Bedrock, and to be able to leverage those individuals in conjunction with my team. And in fact, it's very much teaching us to fish. I want those resources to come in to show us the way that they would implement that, and even potentially to do that work. But then there's a expectation for knowledge transfer so that the rest of the team can learn from that experience. And one thing I find of that in our team is it builds people who are really excited about being here because they know that they will continually be learning new skills, new capabilities, and from experts that are in the industry with very practical, hands-on implementations.
Absolutely. I guess the one aspect we can kind of maybe take a step back and talk about is a lot of everything we're seeing has been built on the backs of open source. Not quite something we had seen the previous 20, 30 years in enterprise development. I at least not that I'd recognized. It was still a bit of a niche usage. I guess this rise of open source and enterprise strategy, how do those two kind of now, they obviously work, but it is interesting they work, but driving innovation, how do teams had to have shifted at this point to incorporate more of these open source tools?
Yeah, I have 2 points of view on this because I think that the open source community spark a huge amount of innovation in tech. And there's a lot of great ideas that kind of like an old-time bazaar, like you have all these different merchants that are in there, and the merchants that are successful are the ones that draw people into their store. And the same thing happens with open source. As you have a project that somebody thinks is of incredible value and contributes into one of the open source communities, then they're looking to build a community around that that's equally excited and vibrant. I thought that Spark was one of those communities, the Apache Spark, that really picked up, and you've seen the great progress that came out of that. Obviously, when you look at Kafka and the Apache Kafka project, LinkedIn contributed that into the open source community, and a number of us out there looked at that and said, this is solving a problem that I have that I'm not able to solve in a current set of technology. And so a number of companies co-invested into that, where you see a lot of contributors that are in the particular project. But where that really achieved commercial success is when Confluent picked that back up. And so now you take this innovation and the incredible breadth of knowledge that comes out of the open source community and passion out of the open source community, and you make it approachable for larger enterprises. And so I'm now in that larger enterprise category. Cloudera was on the other side of this in the promoting the open source community. within Precisely now as a large enterprise, I'm looking for enterprise grade and enterprise grade technology and enterprise grade support for that technology, so that I'm not thinking about building up an engineering capability around, for example, Spark or around Kafka, but I'm able to consume those services from a company like Confluent and be able to leverage their support, their hardening, and their kind of enterprise grade tools around that for security.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's been tremendous to see how technology leaders have shifted that whole strategy. What was, maybe a decade ago, not something that an executive would bring up at the round. Hey, let's use open source. Now it's pretty much standard across a lot of fundamentals of all these tools. I guess if you're going to take a step back and look at, obviously, in talking about AI, talking about adoption, talking about usage, it still does take a fair bit of heavy lifting to get these solutions to market. I mean, it's still early days. I mean, people have drawn a lot of analogies of where we're at within that phase, but to actually get people using these tools more, what are you seeing in the marketplace that has allowed for better, just adoption and usage overall when a tool does get in the hands of the end user?
Yeah, and to your point, I think this is eerily familiar to me. I was in the .com boom back in the late 90s, and really it started off, we were all building brochure websites in essence. Come to my lovely website. But it was a standalone property. It really didn't represent the interconnected nature that would become Web 2.0. And I feel we're at the same place today with generative AI. Like, I think that the technologies today are very much around summarization, and I find these sort of individual use cases that are building off this, where we're learning capabilities, and we're candidly, we need to have our coworkers understand with us how to leverage AI responsibly. And so summarization and the things like Copilot are great engines that help support that. But the next step of this really gets us into the autonomous actions that AI can take. And that is AI 2.0 as we look forward to the future. I think in the same way that APIs unlocked the web, MCP server is going to unlock generative AI. We're going to build these tools, and they're going to have these designated interfaces for us to be able to access the tool and be able to say, I want this component over here to achieve and do these specific skills, and then hand it back over to my master process. The same thing that we're doing today, where we see where I call out to APIs in a number of ways across the current web architecture. So adoption-wise, I think that's kind of where we are, and we're building trust that AI autonomously will be able to do things. We're being able to understand the guardrails that we need to put in place around that. But we haven't built trust yet around this. And I think there's a number of reasons that are impacting our lack of trust.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to. I think a lot of people hear about this trust component, but I guess what are some of those drivers?
Well, from a chief data officer, you're going to be surprised that I'm going to tell you that AI is only as good as the data that's behind it. So preparing the fabric of data for AI means that it's integrated, it's clean, it's up to date. We have a vivid line that we believe that we can draw this back to its lineage and understand its context. That's a stabilizing force that's going to allow us to scale AI responsibly. And that's the hard work that goes into building out your data catalog, to building out the assets of high integrity within your organization. And so there's kind of no such thing as fairy dust. You don't just take generative AI and throw it at your chaos of data and expect it to make magic out of it. There's an incredible amount of hard work below the waterline of the data that says, all right, we've built out the catalog, we understand the lineage, we understand the data quality, we've built out the semantic layer on top of that. And at that point, it unlocks the ability to rapidly put AI tools on top of this. We're doing 2 implementations right now here within Precisely of generative AI as we speak, that are moving off of trusted data sources so that they are built off our data catalog. We have the full context within there. We've already built the quality into that catalog. And now we're enabling the semantic layer on top of that and building the agents on top of that. And we're finding incredibly high quality responses that are coming out of these models. And it doesn't surprise me. If you look at this and you say, well, the underpinnings of that is I can get to that through any other mode throughout the organization. I can put BI on that. I can put, my Python models on that if I'm doing just standard machine learning. And yes, I can also turn over here and open that up to generative AI and get excellent results out of that are understandable to my business users, and it allows them to build that trust.
I think as you were mentioning that, I was thinking about, you obviously mentioned data is at the core of everything, and we've also seen some studies come out about the success of AI projects, Gen AI projects. I think it's a little bit hard because it is still early days. A lot of people going through POCs, they're building muscle memory. When you're looking at companies that are out there doing, I mean, you guys are working on this as well, but just generally the market itself, you have to find data. I mean, there are other ways around this, but your data, as you said, is a clear area where the focus has to be. And does that potentially limit what you look at, the types of projects you want to take on? I mean, if you're a leader and the data doesn't look good, maybe you're like, hey, this isn't the right place to implement this. And, whether or not that's fixable down the road or not might not even matter, but you have to start someplace. But data quality, does that influence where solutions will start being rolled out?
Absolutely. I think that we talk about data being fit for purpose. And in this, it means that the data and the technology meets the specific needs it was intended for. So analyze and say, what does this solution need? We had a project that we just finished rolling out, which was focused on contract summarization. So we bring in things like, what's the master service agreement? What are the various different numbers of amendments that have happened to that? What's the current quote that we have? And being able to assess that in the full understanding of our customer. But all of that requires that the tool have access to the right documents. And so if you turn around and say, well, I don't have a contract lifecycle management tool, that's going to put the onus of that on your end users to curate the appropriate sets of data. And then you're going to find out that your people have different levels of skills around that, or even different levels of access. So the ability for the solution, the tool, which is working well, to actually perform is based on the ability to get the appropriate source data into it. And so any project that you start with has to go, well, what data am I going to use to fuel this? What do I know about that data source today? Does it have known warts? Are there going to be things that are going to be barriers for us to train a model on? And if I can't explain it to a first-year intern, can I explain it to a model? No. Those are sort of the boundaries that I look at. Is the data ready for us to be able to put generative AI on top of it?
Absolutely. And I guess when you're looking at that, and we're looking at the stakeholder themselves, and we're looking at AI solutions, I mean, they're supposed to be fundamentally shifting how someone's doing a job to a certain degree, the human in the loop, trying to bring about efficiency. I mean, we're not just deploying, I guess, an application that gives them more capabilities to do their job. We're actually trying to partially take some of that away and help facilitate their job. I mean, is this a little bit different? Is there a different mindset you need than what traditional applications and traditional data solutions required when we're deploying them? Is it still the same fundamentals, or different set of tools? We need to view this with a different lens.
Yeah, I remind when I was back in this was probably the late 90s. I was working on a machine learning program where for delivery drivers who were doing last mile delivery into retail location, we were helping them to forecast what they needed to bring off the truck into the store. And we actually had tuned up a really good model on this. It was, based on all the metrics, incredibly accurate. And what we found is that our end users wouldn't adopt it. So we would put the model in, they get it in their handheld device, they'd look at that and they go, no, that number is not right. I know better. I'm going to override that number. And what we had failed to account for was the human in this equation here. So to improve that, what we did instead of putting the number in the box is we put the number next to the box, and our human took the number next to the box and put it in the box. And we went from like a 40% adoption rate to over a 90% adoption rate of the forecast. And then we saw all of the delivery and improvements that went around there. Our humans are the last mile of this that we have to win over to our AI solutions. And by doing that, we have to say we're taking away the drudgery in your job, but we're not taking your job away. We're going to bring your capability to bring higher value to the organization. And I know that sounds all high-minded, and you're going to say to me that, Dave, not everybody does that. There are folks who are not going to be able to retool to this economy, and I recognize that. But for a majority of us, it's incumbent on us to think about what would we do with our day if I didn't have to do all this other really drudgery stuff. And that's the stuff I want to get off your plate.
Absolutely. I guess when we're taking that viewpoint, and I guess technology traditionally has missed. It's not had the biggest track record of success. I mean, I don't know what the stats are. Somebody out there probably knows better than I do. There's a large percentage of IT projects, quote unquote, that do not succeed. I kind of think this is even a little bit more complicated than shipping a application that's supposed to add a couple of features, and part of it is taking everything you've said into account, right? The data, the stakeholder, we're impacting the user's workflow, their job. When we're looking at this overall package, I mean, there's other things that we haven't even gotten to or talked about. I mean, we talked data governance issues, security, privacy. This one seems to be, getting our arms around more and more of these components get even harder and harder. But yet they seem fundamental. Like data governance is one of those where maybe there's factors we've considered, and AI will cause us to rethink those factors for what we have and what we don't have. I guess when we are looking at solutions for AI, what are some of those things that we might go, not as essential as maybe in yesteryears, but today absolutely imperative?
Yeah, I come back to this. It does come back to the basics, and I feel like I'm kind of boring in this. This concept of well-formed data products isn't going to help just AI. I talk to a number of organizations on a regular basis where they don't have this even to support their standard BI tools. And so the symptom of this is when I talk to a colleague and they say, we'll get into a meeting, we're standing around the conference table, and everybody has different numbers about what we're talking about. And so the argument starts off with who pulled the numbers the best, who had the right way to get to the data that we're going to now try to make a decision at this table. And candidly, that's not a problem that we have it precisely, but it's a problem that I've seen in a number of folks that I talk to, and we come back to how do we do it differently? And what we do is we build out that data catalog of documented, governed, quality checked, well-formed data products, and then we orient the organization on those. And we can use those in multiple ways, but if I have a context, whether it's leads or opportunities or billings or bookings, we've built a data product around that is exposed within our data catalog and can be used by any one of the tools that somebody wants to apply to that. And that's where they bring their innovation to this, where they may have a set of third-party data that they want to enrich with that, or even their own observations that they want to build out categorization, which is great as long as the totals always add up to the same, they foot to the same sets of numbers. And that discipline allows us to rapidly take this next step, which is move and put AI on top of that same thing. And now I can go and toggle between the two things. Side by side, I can look at the results that are coming back from my generative AI analyst model and my dashboard and verify and get trust that those two things are working. And at which point, somewhere along the line, I can choose which venue is the right way for me to get access to my information. If I can drive that kind of behavior, then we can start to build automation off these things. Because now that person can say, I use this query, this prompt to identify these actionable things, and then I take this action based on that. That's something that I can help them if they say every day I come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, I run this, I look at these, and I do this thing. That to me is something that we can help pick up with generative AI, and they can get on to the next higher level task beyond that.
Absolutely. I guess actually maybe final question for you. I've been asked this question often, but I'm starting to like it. And you as the chief data officer, you're overseeing all these different initiatives we talked about, all these various different aspects. Your job is shifting as well because how quickly the market's changed and how quickly these advanced technologies have come to your doorstep. What have you, as a CDO, what have you had to do to adjust to? Yeah, I guess that's the question. What have you had to do in the last couple of years to start adjusting to this AI, or maybe it's an advanced technology, maybe we don't limit it to AI, but what have you had to do?
I had to look and rethink what are we doing today that can be served by AI solutions. And so I want to try to get away from this paving the cow path. Going down exactly the same. The cows went down that way, and they said, "Hey, cool, let's put a railway in that exact way, and then finally let's pave a road over that." That's not necessarily the best way for us to travel. So as we are looking at the problems we're trying to solve, we say, "This is drudgery. This is rote." Not can I do the exact same thing that we were doing before, but just throw AI on top of that. But really think about how AI can transform the way that we do what we're doing. And that forces co-creation. I need equally to have our business leaders within our organization step up in the same way and want to co-create, not just to say, hey, we do this thing, go AI that, but really for us to go together. If we could do this differently with all the new inputs we have and the incredible processing capacity that we have to use multiple inputs and multiple data streams to have a solution that comes out of this, what would I do differently and how would that benefit us? And that's a pivot. Like treating your IT organization as a co-equal partner in how we rethink this, not just handing over a spec that says go redo this, but put AI on top of that.
Love it. Dave, fantastic stuff. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. If someone wants to learn more, follow-up question, that type of thing, what are good ways of getting in touch?
Easiest way, go find the people that contributed Kafka into the Apache community at LinkedIn. I'm at SchumanD on there. And Amir, this has been fantastic. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you as well. And that's it for this episode. Be back again. Different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I think Dave did a great job of talking to us about a lot of different aspects of AI within the org. We talked about talent, talked about the different types of talent that you need, that you should be hiring, talk about different types of adoption and usage hurdles, talked about how data has to be fit for purpose. So covered a lot of ground. So if you are in data, please share this with someone else that might benefit from it. I'd really appreciate that. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show's going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.